Welcome to Prairie Adventures. I'm Corleen Gardner with the Interpretive Program. We've developed this program in cooperation with Shaw TV, and we are pleased to have you with us again today. We've been telling you stories about the plants and animals of southeastern Alberta and some of the people who live here too, and learning a little bit about their stories. Medicine Hat and Southeast Alberta is a great place to live or visit. On one of our previous episodes, we talked about staying active, healthy, and warm through the winter. Today, we want to see how the animals do that too. Now, people have different attitudes towards winter. There's some that just can't wait to get out and play in the snow. There's others that shrug and deal with the snowy roads and know that spring is going to come sooner or later. And then there's others who will do whatever they have to avoid at least part of the winter. Well, you know what? The animals are kind of like that too. Some actually benefit from winter, and others go to great lengths to avoid it. Marty's waiting nearby, and he is going to be telling you about how some of our animals deal with winter.
Thanks, Corleen. Of course, there's lots of animals here in our area during the winter. And winter can be a time of extremes that these animals have to deal with, especially with our Chinooks. So we can go from -30 deep freeze with lots of snow to temperatures well above freezing with fast snow melts in just a matter of hours. And so the local wildlife, they need to be able to deal with these quickly changing situations in order to survive the winter. And there's lots of strategies that animals can employ to survive winter. Well, one of the main ones, of course, is migration, where animals just leave the area. But I'm going to focus on animals that stay here, and I'm going to concentrate on the mammals because they're most like us. So there's three main adaptations that the mammals are going to be using. And the first one is to stay inactive all winter long. And we generally refer to that as hibernation. And this is where warm-blooded mammals reduce their metabolic rates and lower their temperatures and go into a near death-like state for the months of winter. Another strategy that animals use is to be inactive most of the winter. And this is where they're going into kind of a sleep or trance-like state called torpor. And they're not really going into full hibernation. So when temperatures are a little bit milder, conditions a little bit better, they can actually wake up from this sleep and undertake different activities, move around in their den, or even go outside for short periods of time. And then when conditions get bad, they can go back into their hiding spot and go back to sleep. And then the last adaptation is to be active almost all of the winter. And this means going out and actively searching for food and for shelter. So animals will employ one of these strategies. They have their pros and cons, definitely, but whatever the animal adopts, it seems to work well for that particular species. So for our area, as far as true hibernators are concerned, the best example is the Richardson's ground squirrel, which we commonly refer to as gopher. And so these guys that we tend to take for granted, that we even consider pests, are vital parts of the prairie ecosystem, but they can go into their state of suspended animation for up to 8 months of the year. Now, surprisingly, hibernation isn't really all that common in our area. There's a large group of mammals that undertake the strategy of being inactive for just most of the winter. And these include things like skunks, raccoons, and bats. So in the harshest conditions, they're safely ensconced in a crevice, a burrow, or a cave. And then when things get better for a short amount of time, they can go out and they can search for food or get a drink, or especially get rid of waste products. And then when the conditions get bad again, they're back into their hiding place and back to sleep. Now, most of the mammals in our area are the ones that are active all winter long. And so when we're out and about, we see deer, we see cottontail rabbits, and they're active, and the reason why we see them is because they're active during the day. Most mammals, though, are active at night. They're nocturnal, so we don't really see them. So we have predatory animals like coyotes, foxes, bobcats, and weasels, and they're constantly looking for food in order to be able to survive the winter. And then besides deer, other large mammals that we can see are elk, moose, pronghorn, and bison. They're not hibernating, and they're actively moving around looking for food and for shelter. Even small mammals like deer mice and voles can be active during the winter months. And so one of the things that you can look for to find out more about this story is after a fresh snowfall, go out and you will just be amazed by the number and the variety of tracks that you will find. Now, two of our best examples of mammals that are active all winter long are pronghorn and beaver. Now, outwardly, if you look at a pronghorn, it doesn't seem as if it could survive our harsh winter conditions here for more than just a few minutes. They look so dainty. But mammals depend on their fur to survive winter cold, and pronghorn have some of the most specialized fur of all the mammals, so they can actually do quite well in cold temperatures. And it even helps them keep cool in the summertime. And like many large animals, pronghorn take advantage of subtle differences in topography and shrub cover in order to give them advantages to survive the winter. And this can even be done in the open country like our prairies. Now, one of the big problems that pronghorn face is one of their helpers is no longer present on the prairies. So pronghorn were dependent on bison when snow depths got quite extreme. And so the bison would come along and use their big heads to move the snow out of the way to get to their food. And then pronghorn could exploit this and follow in after the bison were done and get to the food that they need. Well, without the bison there, when snow gets too deep, the pronghorn are facing challenges, and they can even have big die-offs. And this occurred a few years ago when snow conditions got quite bad, and we even had pronghorn coming into the city of Medicine Hat out of their preferred habitat. Now with beaver, it seems like they've perfected the art of winter survival, and they do things most similar to what we do. So beavers build a nice, cozy home with multiple rooms to live in and be out of the winter. And the other thing that they do is in the fall, they go out and collect lots of food, and they store it in the water right near their lodge. This is their pantry. So when the weather is really cold and miserable, they're safe inside of their house, huddling with each other, keeping each other warm. And then it's just a short trip right outside their front door to get a tasty morsel to snack on. And then if temperature's warm, they can go out and gather more food if they need to. So there you are. There's a whole bunch of different examples of what mammals are doing to try to survive the winter. There's lots of other animals here that take up very different types of strategies and have quite fascinating stories as well. So stay tuned, because maybe in another episode of Prairie Adventures, we'll talk about those.
Thanks, Marty. Marty told us about the hibernators and the long sleepers, the ones that sleep away most of the winter. And when the days get really short and the temperatures go down, 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 there's a few people who would like to sleep away most of the winter too. But there are other animals that go to even greater lengths to avoid the winter, and those are the ones that migrate. Now, migration is a really interesting process. And not all, we think of birds migrating, but not all birds migrate. Valerie has some things to tell us about that.
Thank you for the introduction, Carlene. I wanted to speak about migration, but actually not migration, because a lot of birds actually don't migrate. They stay here. Yes, that's true. There are some birds that stay here all year round. Now, with all the spectacular business of the flocks leaving in huge numbers, and of course all the things that go with that, there's going to be long distances to go. There's going to be the fact of having to find food along the way. And also, we also have the problem with on this journey they might get eaten, or they may get hunted, and there's always a chance of storms and many other things that cause them to lose their way. So the birds that actually don't migrate, they actually have a less of a risk because, well, for one thing, they save energy. They save energy. We all want to save energy, and now by not having to fatten up over the summer months, they've been able to just sort of stockpile their food. And they're very smart. Those little bird brains are really good about knowing where they stash their food. So that's one of the reasons. And another one is, well, nurturing their young, which I know sounds odd, but in the case of some of the bigger species of birds like owls and even the hawks, like the bald eagle or the great horned owl, they actually take about 4 months for their babies to actually mature and possibly leave the nest. But in this case, they can take care of them a little bit longer, so they're stronger and healthier, so they will actually be able to withstand the colder weather. And then there's also territory. This is something that a lot of people don't think of, but the birds that stay here, well, they get their choice of what nice nesting areas, good feeding areas, so they have the advantage when the other migrating birds come back and they're weak from flying, that they can actually defend their territory quite well. Now, for those advantages, there are several birds in this area that you can actually see if you're looking about. We have birds like several woodpeckers like the downy and the hairy, the pileated, and even the northern flicker stay here all year. And other birds like the owl, the great horned owl, is here all winter, and sometimes even you can see the bald eagles. And then there's smaller birds, such as the nuthatch, the black-capped chickadee, and the several finches. We have the American goldfinch, the house finch, the purple finch, and the corvids, which means the blue jays and the magpies. These are ones that you commonly see here all year round. So now we know the advantage for them to stay here. And how about for us? Well, it's an advantage because, guess what? We get to watch birds all year round. So even though some people still believe that all the birds migrate, now you know the truth. So thank you, and back to you, Carlene.
Thanks, Valerie. Valerie's been telling us about some of the birds that spend the winter here, but an awful lot of our birds get out of town. They migrate someplace where it's going to be a lot warmer and more reliable food supplies. Sounds like a good idea. But have you actually thought about these little birds packing on enough weight that they have the energy to fly thousands of kilometers? And it's not an easy trip. Here, they know their territory, they know where they have food, they know where they can be safe. They leave here, heading off, hoping that they have enough energy, or they can find some places to refuel along the way. And there's lots of dangers along the way. They might not know where there's good shelter. They might run into a skyscraper that's all lit up at night and is confusing. And when they find a place where they want to spend the winter, there might be a lot of other competition for those food supplies. So heading south for the winter sounds good, but for a lot of birds, it's a real challenge and a real gamble. Now, I know a few people who like to migrate too. Trade in making snowmen for building sandcastles. It has some appeal. Mostly we think about birds being the ones that migrate, but one of our large mammals is also a real traveler. And interestingly, It's only in the last few years that scientists have begun to understand the routes and the distances that this animal travels. Marty is chatting with Megan Jensen, who is coordinating a study about our traveling pronghorns, and she needs your help.
Thanks, Corlaine. So one of our symbolic prairie species, the pronghorn, faces all kinds of survival challenges throughout the year, including winter. And as we all know, winter can be quite hard on local wildlife. And in order to survive, pronghorn need to be able to travel extensively around the area in order to find enough food. One of the big obstacles they encounter is dealing with all the highways and roads that cover our area. So I'm really pleased to have Megan Jensen with the Mestakis Institute here with me today to talk about a relatively new program that's going to be monitoring pronghorn in our area. Hi Megan, thanks for joining me today.
Hi Marty, thanks for having me.
All right, so the name of your project is Pronghorn Crossing. And so tell us a little bit more about how the project came about and what its main purpose is.
So Pronghorn Crossing is a citizen science project led by the Mestakis Institute. It's modeled after a project that they have in BC called Roadwatch BC, and they're just looking for animals along the highway and such, like pronghorn crossing. So Pronghorn Crossing has three main reasons that we wanted to start it. And the first is that this area is really lacking data in where wildlife are using the highways, where wildlife are crossing the highways, and where they're actually dying on the highways due to wildlife vehicle collisions. The other reason is because it's a very unique conservation opportunity for the citizens in this area. We want them to get involved and get passionate about the cause like we are, and just to land up making sure that the citizens can help us figure out where the pronghorn are crossing the highway. The third reason is we know that highways are an impediment to pronghorn migration. We know that it's a problem, so we just want to be able to pinpoint where the worst of those issues are and figure out a way to facilitate a way to do highway crossing.
Oh, okay, so how can the public get involved and help you out?
So there are two ways that the public can get involved. The first is our smartphone application. You just download it at Google Play or iTunes. It's Pronghorn Crossing, X-I-N-G. And if you download that, you can use it in your vehicle, preferably not by the driver, please. And you just start using it when you're out traveling in South East Alberta or Southwest Saskatchewan. And you can just mark down where you see animals along the highway, where you see them crossing the highway, or where you see them deceased. The second way that you can use the app is if you're a driver, we just want you to take a mental note when you're out and about. Say you see a pronghorn, just when you get home, go to your computer, go to our website, which is pronghorncrossing.org, and you just go and put it on our mapping system and just pinpoint that location so we know where you were.
Okay, and so are there any specific locations of concern that the public should be more aware of?
So pronghorn are at their northernmost range here in southeast Alberta and southwest Saskatchewan, and pretty much any of those areas we're going to be looking for pronghorn. As I said, we're not exactly sure where the main problem areas are, so if people just keep their eyes open and use the app, we would really appreciate that. Okay,
so go over again where they can get more information, and can they actually contact you directly?
So if they'd like more information, they can go to our website, which is pronghorncrossing.org. And I would love it if they would contact me directly. Any questions or observations or concerns with the app, it's Megan, M-E-G-A-N, at pronghorncrossing.org.
Okay, and then why is this project important?
So this project is important to both pronghorn, wildlife in the area, and to people. So in 2008, Alberta Transportation did a study and they found that they were spending $240 million. The Alberta citizens were spending $240 million on wildlife vehicle collisions a year. So that's a huge number. If we could make it safer for wildlife to cross the highway, it would be great, and for the safety of people and for the amount that's being spent on these collisions. The other thing is pronghorn are unique species. As I said, they're at their most northern range, and they really struggle getting to their migration areas. So if there's an extreme weather event and they're struggling to cross the highways, that can actually lead them to susceptible to death because of that extreme weather. So it's really important for us to make sure that they're getting there easily.
Okay, so just to add a little bit more detail, tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got involved with this project.
So after school, I started out with Alberta Conservation Association on the Pronghorn project, and that's a project that really focuses in on how pronghorn are using fences to go through to their migration route. Because they can't go over the fences, they have to go under them. So if fences are too low, it can change their migration routes. So they're just trying to figure out ways to get that information. The other thing is I started with Multistar, which is a program that is through Alberta Conservation Association, and they just work with species at risk in the grasslands. So after that, I moved to Medicine Hat, and they gave me a call at Alberta Conservation Association, and they let me know about this Mistocus job, and I was lucky enough to actually get it after applying.
All right, so a lot of our viewers probably aren't too familiar with the Mistocus Institute. Please tell us a little bit more about that organization.
So the Mistocus Institute is a research institution. They gather information about conservation issues, and then they're the ones who are going to compile the information from this project that the volunteers get for us when they're using the app. And after they get that information, they're going to create a report, analyze the data, and send that to the Alberta government and to the Saskatchewan government in hopes to facilitate mitigation strategies such as wildlife-friendly fencing or over highway crossings like you would see near Banff.
Okay, is there any way the public can help or get involved with the Mistocus Institute?
So just by using our apps is one main way that you can get involved. If you are looking for more specific opportunities, you could always go to their website at rockies.ca.
Okay, great. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I just want to talk a little bit about the route function on our app. So when you go into it, there's a route function, and you just start that route. And that helps us to know that maybe we're not seeing pronghorn in a certain area, and that's not because you're not driving it, it's because they're not there, or vice versa. So it really helps us to eliminate any bias and just make sure that we know where the animals are, because no information about an area, like no data is as important as data. So the other thing I would like to talk about is our funders, so Alberta Conservation Association and NFWF, so National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Those are our funders, and we're so appreciative. The other people are our supporters. So we have Alberta Transportation, Alberta Environment and Parks, Saskatchewan Ministry of Environment, and the Saskatchewan Government Insurance. And they're just great, so we wanted to thank them.
All right, well, great, Megan. Thank you so much for providing that information today. So remember, everyone, citizen science projects like this one don't work very well unless you, the public, get involved. So take a little bit of time, gather some more information, go to the websites, and then do your part to give pronghorn a helping hand.
Thanks, Marty and Megan. I hope all of you will be out there watching for the pronghorns and helping us learn more about this beautiful animal. And while you're out there, watch for the signs of the other animals that are active. When there's fresh snow, every footprint is left for us to read in the morning. There's other ways you can understand what's going on too. And Valerie's very good at finding some of those clues. She has some hints for you.
Thank you, Carlene. Winter is a perfect time to go animal tracking. You just have to get out there and start looking. Yeah. Myself as a park interpreter here in the Prairie Forest, a police point, a lot of times I don't actually get to see the wildlife myself. If it wasn't for the fact of winter and I seeing the winter tracks, I wouldn't think there was actually wildlife in this park. Now, looking for tracks, well, that's important, but you have to realize not being able to see the animal is not the whole picture here. You're looking to see evidence that they've been here. Animals like coyotes and deer are quite stealthy, and they can hear and see you way before you have even seen their tracks. So it's important for you to get out when there's fresh snow. The fresh snow makes a perfect medium for tracking. Winter tracking is a great way for you to get outdoors, and maybe it might even change your perspective on the prairie forest here, about the wildlife that's in our forest or in our area, and about winter itself. You have to just get out there and start doing it, looking for signs. And it's a great way to involve the family, and it's free to get out there, look for tracks and trails. A few tips for you: go where the animals go, where they like to eat or drink. Here, at a backyard bird feeder, and animals are nocturnal, which means they're more light, first light and last light. So checking out the trails in the morning is probably a good opportunity for you before they get trampled. And of course, after a fresh snowfall, the tracks are so easy to spot in that soft snow. So if you have any questions, just call us here at the Nature Center. Thank you for watching. I'm hoping to see you on the trails doing some tracking. Back to you, Caroline.
Thanks, Valerie. It's a busy place out here. And that's it for Prairie Adventures this time. We've talked about people and animals who would rather sleep away the winter or maybe migrate. We've learned about a pronghorn study, and we can all help out with that one. And of course, Valerie gave us some clues of how to look for the signs of the animals. If you'd like to ask us more questions about that, come on down to the Nature Center. We're here Tuesday through Sunday, 9 to 5. And if you can't make it, you can phone us, 403-529-6225. If there's snow to play in, check to see if we're running some extra special events. We want to get out there and enjoy the winter, so check our Twitter and our Facebook. Hope to see you down here at the Nature Center.